Hi, this is Corinne Saunders with Outer Banks Insider. Welcome to Down the Road, where we interview community members who live down the road from you. This show is sponsored by CMG Home Loans in Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina, and our subscribers get early access to the show, as well as access to all of our exclusive local reporting. To become a subscriber today, visit www.outerbanksnews.org. We're here today with Laura Wayland. She's a local entrepreneur on the Outer Banks with a whole series of businesses. So Laura, thanks for coming on today and talking to us.
You're welcome.
Awesome. So tell us first how you landed on the Outer Banks.
Oh my gosh. So we lived in Moyoc for about 12 years, and I was doing an in-home wine tasting company, kind of like Pampered Chef for wine, and that company went under. So I needed to look for a new opportunity. I actually Googled Outer Banks wine shop for sale. And up popped this really great store called Chips, Wine, and Beer. And so my husband and I drove out here to look at it. I went upstairs, he was working from home, and I said, I have this idea. I think we should buy a wine shop. And he was like, where are you gonna get the money for that? And I said, from a bank. So we drove out here, it's not that far. Drove out here, looked at the wine shop. We loved it. It was like exactly like the kind of wine shop that I would love to have. It was one of those like sideways raining days, winds blowing, and there's like tons of people still coming in the store. And I was like, this is a really cool little wine shop. Like, I like it. So we started talking to the people, and that's kind of how we got here to the Outer Banks. So yeah, just slow rolled it, and now we live here.
Yeah. What sparked your interest with wine?
So that in-home party company that I did, I started doing that when I was 27. I was a stay-at-home mom. And I was looking for something that I could do from home and still have my kids. They were small. So I found this company, and then I didn't know anything about wine when I started doing it. I ended up with having 120 consultants underneath me and learning all about wine, taking and earning incentive trips and taking wine trips, and learned a ton about wine. So that's how I kind of got into wine.
Yeah. Nice. And so then you all bought Chips.
We did. We bought Chips, and that was in 2010. So it was it was a successful store at the time. People would ask me, are you going to change the name? And I'm like, no, I paid a lot of money for that name. Like, I'm keeping that name. So, so we just looked for, ways that we could add value and kind of keep innovating. And yeah.
And so then you've also expanded into other areas of business. So tell us about that.
So I think it was probably a couple of years later, we had added the tasting room at Chips, and I wanted to expand on that by adding olive oils, and I thought maybe we could do 6 different oils in the tasting room, and people could come in. So reached out to a supplier, found that if we did a standalone store, we could do like 60 to 70 different oils and vinegars. And luckily, a place in the same shopping center at Milepost 6 that we were at came available. The rent was really reasonable, so we decided to open our first olive oil store, which got a lot of questioning looks. I would tell them, we're going to open this olive oil store, and people said, olive oil? Do people buy olive oil? There was a lot of doubting and thinking that was, I think someone actually said, that's stupid. So
that was the first such store in the area, so people weren't really familiar with the concept.
Yeah, they weren't really familiar, and we kind of really expanded it into more of a gourmet food experience store. So eventually we moved it inside to Chips, where we had the gift room, and we used to do classrooms and tastings in there. So we made it the whole tasting room and added the olive oils. So that really worked out.
And then you opened another olive oil store.
Then I guess I was probably 2 years after that, we opened the Duck store. That was in Scarborough Fair first, and that was very slow. Very, very, very slow, where we were tucked in. I remember talking to my manager saying, can you count the number of people walking by? Because we were just not getting the business that we were expecting. And so that was very frustrating. And I really decided that I wanted to be in the waterfront shops, and I thought that would be a better spot for us. I kept hounding the landlord there every time I heard someone was closing. And eventually we got a spot in the waterfront shops. Yeah. So that was great.
Awesome. And then you also have one in Nags Head.
Yeah, we opened the one in Nags Head at the outlet 6 years ago. That was an incorporation if I had ever done chips and the olive oil all at once, what I would do. So that is kind of that's how that idea came together. So in that location, we do, we still do beer on draft, we do wine tastings, we do cheese by the pound, still have cigars, and so that's just, it's all in one instead of looking like chips and then the olive oil separately.
Right.
So.
Very cool. And then Front Porch also.
Then Front Porch came along. So that kind of came about because right when we opened the olive oil store in the outlets in Nags Head, the outlets had approached us about putting in a coffee bar. So that was about 4 or 5 months after we had opened. So I had approached the owners of Front Porch and asked them to help me. And so they did. So I think I was being interviewed for a potential, their exit, but for 2 years before I even knew. So they helped me get the coffee bar opened. They helped train the staff and things like that. So that's kind of my intro into coffee. But we were always next door neighbors to them. So we were always, we always knew who they were and knew the staff and things like that. So in 2021, they, coming out of COVID a little bit, had approached us about purchasing all 3 locations. And so looking at it, we were like, yes, let's do it.
Right. And what did that mean to you? Front Porch was the first coffee shop of its kind here on the Outer Banks.
Yeah, and it's a beloved brand, and we, looking at the things that we saw with it, we knew that we could add value to it. We knew that we could innovate in some of the other ways that we had done with some of the other businesses. And yes, that was, after looking stuff over, we thought we could make it better. It's already great, but we thought we could make it better.
Yeah. And so now you're opening in Kitty Hawk, a 4th location.
Now we have a 4th location, and this one was on my radar for a while. I definitely wanted a 4th location. We were looking at Kitty Hawk Southern Shores. I had seen a spot that I wanted that didn't end up panning out. But then I said, I know that there's there's something better. I don't know what it is, but we would keep our eyes out. We would talk to real estate agents. We'd talk to different people, anybody who knew anything. I kind of did the hounding again, on people. Anytime we saw something pop up, we were calling, what's this piece of property? Could we build something here? Could we buy something? Could we, is something coming up for lease? What makes sense? And when we heard the McDonald's was closing, we scoured LinkedIn, talked to real estate. How do you get in contact with the largest landowner in the United States, right? It's not like they put a sign out and they say, call us for more information. Yeah. So found the right contact, who then found the really correct contact. And we were told they weren't sure if they were going to sell, they might lease, and they also don't sell to any food and beverage businesses.
Right.
So we asked them, do you ever make a modification to that, specific thing? And they said, well, sometimes we do. And they'd have to ask corporate. So they said they'd get back to us in a few months. And we waited, and we kept hounding them. I guess being persistent is probably one of the things we did. And we just kept staying in touch with them, with no response. Just being ignored. And then at the beginning of February, they emailed us back, and we were one of many. I mean, we were told at that time there was a lot of interest in the property. And so we said, yeah, let us know the details. And then it was much bigger than we kind of anticipated or could have imagined. But I literally had envisioned myself standing inside the McDonald's. Yeah, and one day I'll stop calling it the McDonald's and I'll start calling it Front Porch.
Yeah, it was McDonald's for so long.
It was. I know. We're trying to make it not McDonald's looking. There's a big Happy Meal sign still inside.
Nice. So what would you say have been some of the biggest challenges in this area with your various businesses?
Oh, exactly. I think what I've learned kind of the most too is because the seasonality of it is a real big challenge here, and then you also have visitors that come 1 week and then they're gone. So marketing to people who are here in a very short period of time, while you might have the best business in the world, you could be amazing, best customer service, if people don't know that you're there, or they'll find you the day before they leave and they're like, oh, I wish I knew, or here. And they may never come back to the Outer Banks. Mm-hmm. So, our goal has always been to try to, offer the best customer service and have the best customer experience so that at least maybe they'll tell someone, and then whether they come back, a lot of people do come back to the Outer Banks so that you can build on. And that's how we've seen our businesses grow year over year. Seasonality and dealing with inventory, especially with, products that expire.
Right. You have
So
to plan for the slower
you have to
periods.
plan for it, because otherwise you're going to end up with a bunch of inventory that you're going to either be discounting or you're going to be throwing out. So, where most businesses in a lot of markets have a very, straight line of inventory value. Ours is, go up, sell it off, particularly in duck, where a lot of businesses close. We do not close. I really, really, really work hard we could close. I mean, we're definitely losing money in the off season, but it's really important to me to keep my staff employed, to not be starting over year after year.
Right, I was going to ask about staffing too. How has that?
Yeah, staffing, I mean, I would say, so back when we first started with Chips, Wine, and Beer, that was 15 years ago. Feels like forever. People would just drop off applications. I would just walk to the back and they would be, on the back desk and there would be a stack of them. People stopped by, they filled them out. I could just flip through them and decide who I wanted to interview. So fast forward a few years, that kind of stopped and everything became applying online.
Yeah.
But even then, you weren't getting people to apply online. It was just nothing. So when you were hiring people, you got into somewhat of a desperate situation where you would hire people that you didn't even like them, and then they were a train wreck and you shouldn't be surprised. But those lessons I've definitely learned over time to be a little bit more selective and not be as, desperate. Look for the personality. We can teach you everything else, but I can't teach you to be nice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, so the staffing, I feel like a lot of people say you're really lucky. I don't feel like it's luck. I feel like it's very strategic. I try to pick the people that I think that are going to fit into our culture the best, that are going to work together, that embody kind of the same goals and similar, attributes that the rest of my staff has, so that people stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of year-round staff as well.
I do. It's mostly year-round staff. We hire very few people for the summer, which is great. I try to keep people employed. So I do have a lot of retired people that work, particularly for the olive oil store. The staff for Front Porch tends to be a little bit younger. But a lot of high school kids work throughout the years through high school. They come back, they work the summers. And so we ended up getting, much more value out of that employee versus hiring someone that's going to just work 2 months and then never work again.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of our motto. And I think we hire great people. And I think I say I have the most amazing staff on the beach, and I'm not lying.
That's great. Have there been any other challenges here that you would say were kind of unique?
Unique to the Outer Banks. I don't know. I think a lot of it's the housing, but I don't necessarily think that's specifically. I think we all think that's very unique to the Outer Banks. I don't think that's is specifically unique. It is expensive here. It's expensive in other tourist places too. It's kind of a commonality. We do have the Key West olive oil store that we opened a year ago, and that place is expensive, even more so than here. Makes the Outer Banks look cheap, honestly. But similar issues there with people losing their housing. And I have had employees that have lost their housing over years, where the house is going to be sold or it's switching to Airbnb. So I think what's been great is relationships and people that have worked for us for a while has been great, that I've been able to help them get housing, because those people will contact your boss, I guess, per se, and say, hey, do they have a job? Have they lived here for a while? So those kind of things go a long way when you're competing with 100 people for one spot to rent.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. What are some of the major lessons that you've learned just from initially launching into the world of entrepreneurship?
Right. Oh my gosh, a lot of lessons. I think I mentioned, or I'm not here, but I've talked about it before. I couldn't even fire someone. Like, I had never hired people before. First of all, I could not fire, and I made my husband come in and fire people like if they needed to be fired. So, I mean, not that I like firing people, but I don't have a problem doing it anymore. I look for people who are, I think, really, really great people, and if I hire them, I want them to stay. Like, I'm trying to build a company that if you have a constant turnover, that is not something you want as an entrepreneur. So culture is super important to me. That's, things that I've learned: be persistent, just, keep your eye on the goal. And then, if you're wrong, say you're wrong. Like, we all make mistakes, and I have made a ton. I have like, ooh, I shouldn't have said it that way. Or, I mean, even with a customer or an employee, like, I didn't react in the way that I should have reacted. Sometimes it's not even about that situation. We all know this. Like, customers come in, and I have worked in the stores for a lot of years. With Chips, I worked in the store, managing that store for like 9 years. Mm-hmm. So it's only been fairly recent since we acquired Front Porch that I didn't work in the stores. So that was another challenge and thing that I had to learn. So always working in the stores, always managing. I had my hand on pretty much everything. Right. With 8 stores, you can't do everything. You have to trust people and let go. So I had a business coach tell me, you can't work in the stores anymore. And I was like, I can't not work in the stores. Like, they're like, it's all going to fall apart if I'm not there. And it's not. I think for other entrepreneurs, I would tell them, you have to be willing to let go and not expect that it's going to be done exactly the way that you did it. Like, you have to. If it's at 70% of the way that you did it, like, no one's going to care as much as you care. Right. Like, and I have employees who really, really, really do care. Like, they really are so invested, and they really, really do love, like, our business, and they care about it. And that's really evident. But, like, staying up until midnight and going and fixing, like, a broken computer, like, people aren't doing that. Right. But as an entrepreneur, you're wearing all the hats.
Yeah, and you have to get to a point where you kind of let it go a little bit.
Yeah, you do. You have to, like, and also, I think sometimes people react like, they're like, oh my gosh, I made this mistake. And I'm like, making mistakes is okay. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how we learn, and now you're not going to make that mistake again, right? Like, this is what we learn. Yeah. And so that's how you get better, and that's how people improve. And people are going to make mistakes, and you have to be okay with that, and teaching people so that they can be better and so that they can grow. Right. And then some of it is a lack of, like, okay, well, what did I not do to prepare them for that? That was also, like, on me. It was my mistake. I shouldn't have I've had some scenarios in the past where it was a bad situation with an employee or something, and I let another manager handle it, and I'm like, and then it went sideways, and I'm like, okay, I probably should have handled that one. Sometimes it's like the things, or maybe just included them in it so that they can see how it's handled, but, learning lessons.
It's constant learning.
Constant learning lessons. I am still learning, like, all the time, and I'm never not going to make mistakes. But we're learning each time. I mean, each time even with the new build out with Front Porch, there's a lot we're learning in this time. I've literally done all of the build outs myself for the most part. We've been our own general contractor. This is the first time we've hired a general contractor to do the build out. So I have less control over the timeline.
And so going back to that first initial launch into this, when you first got the bank loan, how are you feeling at that point? And then how does it feel to now look back?
We had a lot of people being like, are you sure? Do you know? Not everybody's built for being an entrepreneur, and that's okay. That's okay. We all need employees too, right? Yeah. So it's not something that everyone understands. I think I've always had an entrepreneurial heart from the time I was young, and even like graduating college, my first business, I was a wedding planner. Like, I took out a little tiny business, card size ad and did some wedding planning for a while. So there's always been those like little pieces of me that, I was selling shells on the side of the street when I was like, 10 or something. So there was always that little piece, but, kind of going through becoming and getting the bank loan when people said you're not going to be able to get a bank loan. I mean, that was 2010, so we were in recession at that point. Banks were not loaning money. It was a long shot, but it wasn't even anything that I really had ever, had approached before. I didn't really even know what we were going to need to get a bank loan. I didn't know even, and maybe that's good, I didn't even know how difficult that actually is. That is not super easy to get. And the bank at that time told us that they had almost somebody in there like once a month trying to buy that store. Wow. For like the previous like year and a half. But when they told me what they needed me to do, I went and did it. So they said, go visit SCORE, which is an organization that helps people with businesses, and there's like other entrepreneurs and business people that volunteer their time. So they told me to do that, so I did it. And they said, make a business plan, 5-year projections, and I did that. Showed up at the bank, and they said we were the first people to ever go to SCORE, and they had told everyone to do it.
Oh, wow.
So I think they were impressed with that. Had my PowerPoint presentation, and the bank guys are like nodding, and I'm like, okay, I can read people's, body language. I think they're going to loan us the money. People are like, they're not going to loan you the money. I was like, but I think that they want to. Like, that's the deal. And so I had approached them to do an SBA loan, and I think even at that point in time, I just heard about SBA. Like, I don't think I even knew what SBA was, really.
Yeah.
And I approached the bank, and they had never done an SBA loan before. So after that, I found out they developed an SBA department in that bank and did bank loans all up in Hold Down the Beach, because that was the only way. So people people think that SBA means that the government is loaning you money. It is not. The bank is loaning you the money. The government is backing the loan up to 85%. So it's an ideal situation when you do not have collateral, because anytime you're going to a business bank loan, you need to put up collateral, which is typically your house. 2010, our house was underwater, as everybody's was. So we didn't have any collateral. We had no money. We were young. I mean, I was 32. My husband was 30. I had been a stay-at-home mom doing this in-home wine tasting party company, and my husband had, got a job right out of college. So we had a very small 401k at his company, and it was, I think we had $25,000 in there, and we cleaned out the 20. I mean, people like that. I mean, it's kind of insane, but that was all the money we had. We didn't have any other money, so that was our big, bet on ourselves. And people said, "Are you afraid?" And I was like, "No." Should I be? But I think at that point I didn't have anything really. So losing stuff, and I was younger too. Losing everything kind of meant like you just go get more money. Like, there's not this small amount that you have right here, and once you've used it up, you can get no more. Like, it's infinite. Yeah. So we're like, okay, if you lose it, just go get more.
So you believed that it worked?
I believed that it was going to work, and I also know how hard we were working. I'm not going to ever say that was like easy. Like, we got the bank loan, and we were like, woo, cool. Now, like, here we go. 6 months after that, my husband got laid off from his job, which pretty much the bank had loaned us money based on my husband having a job that could pay for our house. So they were looking at the business like, stress testing it and looking at it like, hey, the business is this successful, but she comes in and tanks it, right? It's still probably going to be okay. Like, she'll make enough money even if she destroys it, and they can still pay for their home and their family and their expenses. But then when he lost his job, he was in the 12th round of layoffs at that company, and it was like January 2011, and we're thinking, hey, get another job. Well, he was out of work for 2 years. So when your back's against the wall, like, you just do what you have to do, which meant work like work like you're at the store like pretty much every day, and you just like you do what you have to do. Our kids like lived at the store, like, and so after 3 months, and he didn't have a job, we thought, well, if we can't find you a job, we're going to make you a job. So we're going to open a second Chips Wine and Beer. So it's much easier to get a bank loan the second time. Like, just called the bank that time and was like, hey, I have an idea. And they were like, okay. So we took another $150,000 loan and opened the Moyoc Chips, Wine, and Beer, because we were still living at Moayak at the time. Kids got off the bus there. We had called the school, had a bus stop made there. I've set up the back with like, direct TV and like, couches and things like that. So it worked out.
Yeah.
But I worked there as the sole employee for a year and a half. We couldn't afford to hire anybody else. I couldn't afford childcare. So, that's just, you just do what you have to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So anything else that we didn't cover that you think people should know?
Gosh, well, I don't know. I feel like I talked a lot. So I feel like I said a whole lot. I don't know. I think the thing is if people look at entrepreneurship or business owners here on the Outer Banks and they're like, might see the end result, right? This is 15 years later.
Right.
Like, we had a long road of a lot of struggle years and a lot of like giving everything. And you see businesses here on the beach close all the time, right? And I know what it took in the investment to do it and the heartache if you got to the point where you had to close.
Yeah.
Right? Like you ran out. Like you had no more resources, because I also know like if I ever got into the place where it was really bad, and it's been really bad for us before, like I am literally trying like every single thing that I can do.
Yeah.
Like I have not paid myself before. Like, well, no, I'm going to say I always wrote a paycheck, but they got put in like a stack in my wallet. Like just like, and then I'd be like, okay, I can cash one. Like, so it was always important, like make sure I can pay my staff, like make sure we're gonna pay them, and we'll pay ourselves second, and we'll just like, but we did rack up a lot of credit card debt. So I think when people see the end result and they're like, oh, it's really successful.
Yeah, you have so many stores.
Right,
Yeah.
but even like going all in on the new front porch, that's everything. That's like, it's all on black right now. Like that's it. It's really, really big, and it's like the biggest risk that we've ever taken. I mean, I feel like it's a calculated risk, and I feel like we know what we're doing. It would definitely not have been something I could have done 15 years ago.
Yeah.
For sure. But I think seeing like people's path and their struggles and like the way that they got to there is like leaves clues, and it's duplicatable. Like other people can do the exact same thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
We appreciate you coming in and
Thanks.
sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And for all of the episodes, go to www.outerbanksnews.org. Thanks.